Hello, fellow classmates. My name is Kathryn Meadows, and I am here to talk about my designated article, A Cyborg Manifesto by Donna Haraway. So let's get started. So Donna Haraway, just to give a little bit of background, she is a distinguished professor emerita. She works at the Department of History of Consciousness and Department of Feminist Studies at Santa Cruz, the University of Santa Cruz. Her main interests, or not interests, but her main areas of expertise are feminist theory, science, technology, and medicine studies, relations between life and human sciences, histories of animal-human relationships, cultures of nature and environment, science and politics, and animal studies. So, what is a cyborg? Haraway describes a cyborg as a fusion of human machine or human or animal machine. According to her, a cyborg has a cybernetic system. It's a creature of social reality and fiction, and it represents more of a collective than individual. So we're moving past the individual self to a more group-oriented collective self is what the cyborg is about. According to Haraway, a cyborg has no origin story. And unlike Frankenstein's monster, it does not want love or a mate. Its primary purpose is not to fall in love or have a family. That's just not what it's made for. It doesn't recognize the Garden of Eden, and it's not made of mud and cannot dream of returning to dust. So, according to Haraway, cyborgs break three distinct boundaries. One of them is human and animal, and she uses the animal rights as an example of this. So, animal rights activists are now much more involved with animal rights, and she's saying that the animal rights are like humans' rights, and that there should be no distinction between human and animal. If a human has rights, an animal should have rights. Another boundary is organism and machine. She says pre-cybernetic machines could be haunted. They were always the specter of the ghost in the machine. Machines were not self-moving, self-designing, and they're autonomous. This is meaning before the cybernetic systems, you could always see like a ghost in the machine. You could always see that, you could tell that it wasn't alive. It didn't have a mind of its own. However, late 20th machines have thoroughly ambiguous have made thoroughly ambiguous the difference between natural and artificial, mind and body, self-developing and externally designed. So there's no distinction between the natural and the artificial, the mind and the body, when it comes to machines. They're so much like, well, let's just say that you can't tell a difference between the natural and what's not natural. She also describes them as being disturbingly lively, as another term for cyborgs. The third boundary is physical and non-physical. In the article, Haraway describes machines as invisible. We cannot touch them, and that they are made of sunshine, and that they are light and clean, and nothing but signals and electromagnetic waves, as compared to physical machines who have pollution and have a foot stamp, as you could say. These non-physical machines, you cannot touch them. You cannot see them. They're invisible. So, Haraway sketches a picture of a possible unity, a possible society in the future, and it rearranges the worldwide social relations tied to science and technology. She says that she argues for politics rooted in claims about fundamental changes in the nature of class, race, and gender. She wants to go from an organic industrial society to a polymorphous information system, from all work to all play, a deadly game. So she wants to take away, like, again, from this individual, organic, patriarchal society to a more polymorphous information communication system. Again, with that collective in mind. Instead of the self, it's going to be a group. That's what the polymorphous comes in. And then this is a chart where she is describing the old hierarchical dominations can become scary new networks. So this is the chart that she has in the article. And some of the main ones are the left are natural, you would say, and then the right are unnatural. So you have organism and you have a biotic component. You have biology as clinical practice, you have biology as an inscription, you have reproduction, and you have replication. Another big one is sex, and then you have genetic engineering. Labor would be robotics, mind artificial. So you see the left side is more natural, it's more organic, and then the right side is more unnatural, system like. Second World War, you have Star Wars. She mentioned Star Wars in the article a couple times, saying that that's what the future is going to be. It's like Star Wars. And then you're going from a white capitalist patriarchy to a informatics of domination, which is what she's describing as her future group society that she wants. So the cyborg. We've gone over what a cyborg is. Now, the cyborg, she says, is post-gender. It blurs the lines between genders. So if you have a male and a female in patriarchal society, in this future society, cyborgs blur that. There's not really a male or a female. And even in the article, she mentions that there's nothing physically binding a female to be female. And that cyborgs are a way to even blur the lines more fully. It's a kind of disassembled and reassembled postmodern collective and personal self. It is not an it to be worshipped, animated, and dominated. In this patriarchal society, she's saying that women are being dominated by the patriarchy, and that cyborgs are not to be dominated. They're not to be worshipped. And she's not saying that it's in this future society. She's saying it's here. It's now. The cyborg is us. That we are the cyborgs. She describes writing as the technology of cyborgs. And she says certain dualisms have been persistent in Western traditions and have been systemic to the logics and practices of domination of others. And when she says others, it's women, it's people of color, nature, workers, animals. And some of these dualisms, it's self, other, mind, body, culture, nature, male, female, civilized, primitive, reality, appearance, whole, part, agent, resource, maker, made, active, passive, right, wrong, truth, illusion, total, partial, God, man. And this high-tech culture, this future culture that she's explaining, it challenges these dualisms. And this future, it's not clear who makes who, or what is mind and what is body. The biological organisms have become biotic systems, essentially communication devices. She goes on to state that feminist science fiction makes or gives to light these statuses of man or woman, human, artifact, member of a race, individual entity, or body. So she goes on and talks about 4 or 5 different authors that have created, that she calls cyborg authors, feminist cyborg authors that say, bring to light what the problems with society are. And they do this through their writing. So their writing is their power, it's their tool. And one such author, her name is Vonda McIntyre. Her novel was about a girl named Orca. I believe it was called Killer Whale or Killer Waves or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't have the story up. But Orca can talk to killer whales and survive deep ocean conditions. However, she wants to explore space. So she has this gift of understanding the killer whales and surviving in their conditions. But all she wants is to explore space. And to do this, she goes through transformations, which comes to the part of the cyborg. Through virus vectors, through transplant surgeries, she gets implants of microelectronic devices, to where she ends up going into space. But she loses her ability to talk with the whales. So that was the one of the big ones that I saw that gave an example of their writing. So regeneration versus rebirth. Haraway also described one such creature, animal, salamander. She says that it regenerates after losing a limb. So if it loses a limb, it regrows the structure. It doesn't regrow a whole body. And it restores the function of that structure. So I know people have seen like lizards who have their tails pulled off, or like salamanders losing an arm. They'll regrow the limb. And that's the regeneration that she's talking about. They'll regrow it, they'll regain the structure and the function. And she says at this time it can be monstrous, duplicated, potent. And then she says we require regeneration, not rebirth. So she's making this point about how cyborgs don't require rebirth, and how we right now in society don't require rebirth. It's regeneration. So that's another distinction. Lynn Randolph is an author or an artist that read this article back in the 1980s. And when she read this article, she collaborated with Haraway to create this picture. And this is what she describes, from what Haraway describes, this is what Lynn Randolph drew as a cyborg. So you can tell there's animal parts to it, there's cybernetic parts to it, and there's human parts. And it's this, remember the breaking of the boundaries, it's all circulating together. So there isn't one distinct part, they're all together. Like the computer parts are a part of her, the animal is a part of her. And she's using a keyboard, which is a machine. So this is I found this interesting as a visual of what one artist thought that a cyborg looked like. Okay, and there are my references. So I hope you've learned something from my presentation about this article. I'm going to post a few questions in my discussion post regarding this. Please feel free to respond to them, and I'd love to hear your feedback on how I did. Like some of the others on here, I'm more of an introvert, so I don't make a lot of presentations. Um, so hopefully y'all learned something from this, and hopefully it was explained well enough. So that is my presentation. Thank you for listening.